So we'll see from the Premier of Ontario later, but right now we're going to listen into the Prime Minister.
Bonjour à tous. From coast to coast to coast, there are Canadians working long hours to keep each other safe and keep our country moving. But for everyone putting in an extra shift right now, there's someone else who wants to work but can't. Maybe you've been laid off because of the pandemic. Maybe you still have a job but aren't sure if your employer is going to keep you around next month. Whatever your situation may be, we're in your corner. Earlier this month, we introduced the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to help protect your job or help you get back to work. And as of this morning, applications for this program have opened. Employers can now submit a claim for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy through the Canada Revenue Agency. To access the 75% wage subsidy for your employees, go online through canada.ca to reach this portal. Whether you're a charity that employs 200 people or a fast-growing startup that employs just 20, you will be eligible to up to $847 per week per employee. And you can expect to see this money soon. The CRA has partnered with financial institutions, so make sure you register for direct deposit to get your money quickly. The first payments should begin to arrive on May the 7th. For organizations like Focus on Nature, who sent me a letter last week, that's huge. Because of COVID-19, this charity from Guelph would have been forced to lay off all of their staff. But thanks to the wage subsidy, they can now keep their employees on the payroll and keep teaching kids about nature. And there are so many more stories, just like this one. There have been over 300,000 views of the online calculator we launched last week to help businesses prepare a claim. And since the portal opened at 6 a.m. this morning, almost 10,000 businesses have already applied for it. That gives you a sense of just how many people this program will help. Right across the country, it's going to keep businesses and workers connected. And that gives people certainty that they'll have a job now and in the months to come to support themselves and their family. And it means employers will not just have the help to stay afloat through the tough time, but they'll be ready to gear back up when things get better. We all know a local salon or a gym that's had to close, a neighborhood restaurant or shop that's really struggling. And more importantly, we all know people who work there. They deserve a hand to get through this, and that's what the wage subsidy is for.
Since this morning, employers can make a request, online request, to have the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy on the Canadian Revenue Agency website. You will find the online portal on the Canada.ca website to make a request for this 75% wage subsidy. Whether you're leading a charity organization with 200 people or a startup with 20 employees, you can receive up to $847 per employee every week. This is money that you will receive soon. The Canadian Revenue Agency has worked with financial institutions to make it so that you can quickly receive your payments if you choose a direct deposit, with the first payments starting on May 7th. Since 6 a.m. this morning, close to 10,000 businesses had deposited a request. This subsidy will help many people to keep their job during this crisis, and it will also help employers to return quickly to their normal activities once the crisis is over. We all have close to us a hair salon or a gym that had to close its door, a neighborhood restaurant or a small boutique, or really struggling. And especially, we all know people who work in those places. They should have a help to get through this, and that's what this wage subsidy is all about. But it's certain that only one program cannot help everyone. If your employer cannot rehire you, or if you're a seasonal worker, if you can't find a job these days, we will help you. You probably already received your first monthly check of the Canadian Emergency Benefit. If you need it for next month, you only need to go online and confirm that you're still admissible. But let's remember here, you cannot keep both the salary subsidy and the emergency benefit. It's one or the other, not both. As for students, we work with other parties in order to adopt a bill that will enable us to install the measures that we have developed for you. We will continue this work in Parliament, and our first virtual sitting will be tomorrow, and an in-person sitting will occur on Wednesday. Parallel to this, we will also give funding to provinces and territories to increase the salaries of essential workers. They do an incredible job, and they should be compensated fairly.
People are facing different challenges right now, and no single program can reach everyone. So we're coming at this from every angle. If your employer can't hire you back, if you're a seasonal worker, if you can't find a job right now, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit is there for you. You've probably already received your first check. And if you need the help again for the coming month, go online and reconfirm that you're still eligible. And I want to remind everyone, you won't be able to keep both the wage subsidy and the CERB. It's one or the other, not both. If you're a student, there's support for you, too. Right now, we're working with the other parties on legislation to get this help flowing. Parliament will have its first virtual sitting tomorrow and an in-person sitting on Wednesday. And if you're an essential worker, you deserve to be paid properly for your incredible work. Our government is doing its part to make that happen. Ontario came out with their plan over the weekend, and we're working with them to provide the support they need to deliver results. And we're currently in discussion with all the other provinces and territories to get their plans for essential workers in place. I'll have more updates for across the country in the coming days. As I said Saturday, we're also collaborating on shared guidelines for reopening the economy once the time comes. Different provinces and territories will be able to move at a different pace. But we need clear, coordinated efforts from coast to coast to coast. And no matter where you live, you need to continue following the recommendations from public health officials that will keep everyone safe. Comme j'ai dit, on travaille aussi.
As I said, we are also working with the provinces and territories in order to gradually reopen the economy. The reality of every province and every territory are unique, but we must work together in order to ensure the safety of all Canadians. We're all looking forward to get back to normal life. But we must do it correctly, otherwise we will lose all the progress we have achieved up to now. So you know what to do. Stay home. Continue to wash your hands frequently. And if you need to get out, stay 2 meters away from others. Every day, we're getting closer of the day that all of this will be behind us. We are getting closer of the day that we will celebrate all together. But we're not there yet. Let's persevere together, my friends. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On va commencer la période de questions par le téléphone aujourd'hui. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Raymond Filion, TVA. À vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Au sujet de la réouverture.
Mr. Prime Minister, regarding the reopening of the economy that you just talked about, in a measure that will vary from one province to the other and even from a region to another within the same province, is the recourse to the Emergency Act is considered to limit the going of people and close some regional or provincial borders. I hope I don't think I will need this at this point. People are following, in large parts, the directives given by provinces, given by the country, by our health experts. They're limiting their comings and goings. They stay home. And I believe that people know up to what point it is risked. It's risky to reopen and resume our activity too quickly because we could lose all the gains that we have, that we hardly achieved in the the last weeks of confinement, we need to be careful, and I know Canadians know this, and I believe that we have the tools in place in order to make sure that this happens.
I think, as I've said from the beginning, I'm loath to use the Emergency Measures Act, and up until this point, it has not been necessary. I think people have been following the guidelines, instructions of public health officials, of provincial and federal instructions. People have been doing the things necessary to keep themselves safe, to keep their neighbors safe, to keep health workers safe, to limit their movements. We have measures in place that people are following as we reopen gradually. I'm certain people will want to follow these measures, because if we get this wrong, everything we have done, everything we have sacrificed over the past many weeks could have been in vain. We need to make sure we do this very carefully, based on absolutely the best scientific advice.
En suivi?
Est-ce que vous avez vu et approuvé les plans
Did you see or approve the plans that Quebec and Ontario will unveil today and tomorrow? And can you be clear of concrete examples on the rules that must be followed? For instance, the wearing of masks. Will it be mandatory? Will stores have to install plexiglass walls between their employees? What are the types of measures that needs to be employed? Well, first, it's not up to the federal government to approve measures that are under provincial jurisdiction. We are a federation, and we respect the authority of provinces to take appropriate decisions for their own citizens. As you know really well, from one sector to another, from one region to another, measures will be different to keep Canadians safe. What we are elaborating in partnership with the provinces are principles, basic principles, elements like you must make sure to have enough tracking and testing capacity to reopen the economy. You must have precise conditions for different sectors of the industry that will open up. Those are principles to follow, and then provinces have the right and have the obligation to put forth precise elements that work for them.
The provinces have the authority to determine what is in their best interest. It's not up to the federal government to check or oversee the provinces in their areas of jurisdiction, and much of this falls within their areas of jurisdiction. They have the responsibility to do what is right for their citizens. Every province is in different situations. Regions within the provinces are in different situations. And I have full confidence in the premiers of the provinces and the territories to move forward in a way that is right for them. What we've been working on with the provinces is a set of guidelines and principles that can inform the decision makers in each region. Things like make sure that you have enough medical capacity to handle a potential surge. Make sure you're doing enough testing for your situation and have a plan to do more. Make sure that there are specific guidelines in place for specific sectors or industries that are appropriate to keep people safe. It's not up to the federal government to determine what those are. We have tremendous confidence in the provinces, who very much want to make sure that this happens the right way and that we don't fall back into another phase like we're in this time as we gradually open up.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Mia Rabson, the Canadian Press. Line open.
Good morning. You already mentioned that the CERB and the wage subsidy can't both be received by people. How do you see them sort of complementing each other or working together? And are you not worried that workers are sort of going to be caught in the middle and many of them are going to end up having to pay one or the other of them back?
The wage subsidy and the CERB are designed to support workers, to support people who've lost their paychecks. For someone who's lost their job, whose employers can't hire them back with the wage subsidy, the CERB is there to give them $500 a week, $2,000 a month, so that they can pay for their groceries and make through this tough time while they're not receiving any sort of paycheck. But we also realized that it is really important for restoring our economic activity to full potential as quickly as possible, that ideally people stay connected to their jobs, that they stay connected with their employers. And that's why we're facilitating a wage subsidy up to 75%, that is up to $847 a week, that will go through the employers so that people can stay on the payroll and stay connected to their job so they have confidence that they'll have that job when we have time, when we're at the time to come back as an economy. These are two different measures that aim to do the same sorts of things, make sure families and workers are able to make it through this time while doing the right things to keep themselves safe and to make sure our economy comes back strong. But it is one or the other. Because of the uncertainty, because of the application process, it is possible that people will have received both the CERB and the wage subsidy. In that case, they will have to, over the course of the coming months, pay one of them back. So people should keep that in mind, that if you're getting both, you should probably put one of them aside so that you can pay that back and you don't get overly challenged with that down the road. But we recognize that getting money out to people quickly and strongly, reliably, was the most important thing, and that's what we did. We'll figure out the next steps as we go and make sure that it's fair for everyone.
We created two programs to help those who lost a paycheck. First, the Canadian Universal Benefits that was giving $2,000 per month for those who lost their job. But we knew that ideally people would keep their job in order to get back strongly when the economy would return. So we wanted to keep this link between the employer and the employee. And that's why we've brought the salary or the wage subsidy. We would send 75% of the wage the value of the wage to the employers in order for them to continue to pay up to $847 per week per employee, so that when the economy will resume, people will still have their link with their job and they know that they will have a job waiting for them. But those two measures are one or the other. So with the application or the request, it's normal that people receive both offers, but people will have to pay probably the Canadian emergency benefit if you get both. So put this money aside and we will sell this in the months coming. But for now, we made a choice that we wanted to send the money to people in a way that was safe and quick, as quickly as possible, and that's what we did.
Following up, Mia?
Yeah. Do you envision then that many of the people who've already started applying for and receiving the CERB will suddenly be transferred over to the wage subsidy? And is that not very complicated? And are there sort of things within the program to try and prevent double payments so that there isn't confusion about who has to pay what back?
The government agencies have a clear record of who gets what that will obviously help in sorting this out in the coming months. The wage subsidy is retroactive to March 15th, but as of the date that the CERB came in, a number of people didn't know if or whether they were going to get an eventual wage subsidy, and so applied for it. The CERB is coming up on a reapplication moment, and if people are receiving that wage subsidy, they shouldn't reapply for the CERB, the Emergency Response Benefit. It is a situation that is complex, but it is administered by different processes within government that are clear to keep separate. If you apply through your employer if the employer applies for the wage subsidy, that money will flow for you, and you no longer need to apply for the CERB. You no longer qualify for the CERB. Okay.
It's a situation where we wanted to make sure that people would get money quickly, and that's why we came up with the emergency benefit. But as people were getting the wage subsidy, they no longer needed the emergency response benefit, so they won't apply for that one. And we have pretty robust systems in the government to know who got what, who got both subsidies or benefits, and will have to repay back eventually. But for now, we made a choice to send more money to more people during this emergency period because we know people need support. We knew that we had to make a choice, and that choice to send more money as quickly as possible was the right choice for the economy. And we will figure out the next stages together in how to regulate this.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Hélène Buzetti, Le Devoir. À vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. J'aimerais revenir à la question.
Mr. Trudeau, I'd like to go back on my colleague's question regarding the deconfinement plan. We know that in the province of Quebec, we've came with the idea of group immunity to justify the reopening of the schools. Dr. Tam emitted some serious doubts on this concept. What do you? The reopening of schools in Quebec, is it premature? There are many questions regarding immunity, or the group immunity, or individual immunity. We still don't know that if someone had the virus, cannot get it again in a few months. So this is it's too new of a virus to have all these information. So that's why we are encouraging to be very careful in the steps in the reopening of the economy, but that's also why we've launched this work group on the Pan-Canadian work group on immunity against COVID-19, and it will be based in Montreal, and it will do the necessary research in order to better understand the immunity aspect of this disease and how we can better protect Canadians. But it's a medium or long-term work, and we need to be very careful in the meantime. And I know that all provinces are currently are very careful in their reopening for it to be done in the right way, because we do not want to go back to where we were.
We know that there is still a lot of uncertainty around the science of immunity, whether or not someone who has contracted COVID-19 is protected from contracting it again a few months later. That is still uncertain. There's a lot of research and science going on that topic across the country, around the world. We launched the Pan-Canadian Task Force on Immunity from COVID-19 just last week. So we have top scientists that are going to be working extremely hard to figure out what is the reality around immunity in Canada and how we can use it to keep people safer. But this is a work that will go on, it'll have immediate results in some levels, but it'll be a medium and long-term work that needs to be done. That's why we have to be very, very careful and cautious every step of the way in reopening the economy, because we don't want to come back to where we are. And I have confidence that every province is taking very seriously this responsibility to be careful, because nobody wants to have gone through all this for nothing.
Et en sous-question, Monsieur Trudeau, vous avez mentionné que, mercredi...
Mr. Trudeau, you've mentioned on Wednesday Parliament would sit in person. You spoke about the bill on which you're working in order to reestablish the students' benefit. Should we expect that this bill be debated, discussed, and adopted this Wednesday? And if not, is it because there's something that is blocking with the opposition? We have the intention of going forth with this bill to help students. We shared it with other parties on the weekend, and we are currently working with them in order to be able to adopt this bill. It's an important measure that people acknowledge that many students will not have a job this summer, and we need need to support them during this period, not only to pay their rent and their grocery stores in the coming months, but because we need them to stay in school, that they can pay their school fees, and for this year and the years coming, and it's to take care of our youth, to take care of our future, and that's what we will do.
Oui, merci. Thank you. Next question, Cormac McSweeney, City News. Line open.
Hello, Prime Minister. You've been talking about federal guidelines for provinces to follow in terms of reopening their economy. We're expecting the plans from Ontario and Quebec. We've already heard plans from Saskatchewan and New Brunswick. When are you going to release the full list of federal guidelines? I know you gave some examples earlier, but the full list of federal guidelines, because, you know, we have nearly half the provinces now releasing their plans.
We have been working with the provinces over the past weeks to develop a shared set of guidelines. These will not be federal guidelines. They will be guidelines that we agree to, all of us, the 13 premiers and the Prime Minister, all of our different orders of government, to inform ourselves going forward. It is something that is worked together to give Canadians a frame within which they can see the actions being taken in their particular regions. It is important and it is historic, the level of collaboration between provinces and territories and the federal government, and that is going to continue. So we are continuing to work on finalizing those guidelines and hope to have them out in the coming days so Canadians can see them. But I can tell you that already the thinking that has gone into building those shared guidelines with the provinces and territories is already informing the decisions that they move forward with in announcing reopening plans.
Following up, Cormac?
And just wondering as well, you've announced commercial rent relief for small businesses, medium-sized businesses across the country. And Premier Doug Ford has also called for some sort of residential rent relief. Is that on the table for the federal government? Is it in the works right now with the provinces?
We recognize that Canadians need money for an awful lot of things, particularly when they no longer have a paycheck coming in, whether it's rent, whether it's groceries, whether it's supporting their family members. That's why we move forward rapidly on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and the 75% wage subsidy that applications have launched today for. These are meant to replace income that Canadians won't have coming in over the course of this economic slowdown. And that can be used for rent, for groceries, for a range of things. If provinces in whom the relationship between renters and landlords is their jurisdiction want to move forward with more help for residential rent, they can of course do that. We will focus on giving the benefits to Canadians that will replace as much of their paychecks so that they can pay their essentials. Small businesses needed extra support for their commercial rents on top of the wage subsidy, and that's what we've done.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Brian Mullen, Global News. One of the groups still feeling isolated and vulnerable are seniors. Many have had to absorb an extra cost of delivery services on a fixed income. Others have to pay additional dispensing fees at the pharmacy. Last week you said help was coming. How much longer will seniors have to wait?
We knew that moving forward on replacing people who lost and were counting on their paychecks through COVID-19 was the priority. And that's why we move forward with the CERB and the wage subsidy, which launches today. We then recognized that students who often start their summer jobs in early May after finishing their term at post-secondary education needed help as well, which is why we're moving forward on that. Seniors are also facing a tremendous level of vulnerability because of COVID-19. It is health vulnerability, it is being isolated further, and challenges around mental health and isolation, and difficulty sometimes getting groceries and getting the supports they need. We have moved forward on a number of things to ensure that they get supports, but we're also looking at further supports specifically for the most vulnerable low-income seniors who are truly challenged.
Can you outline some of the options that you're looking at?
As I said, we're looking at things like supports for the most vulnerable seniors who are seeing extra costs because of COVID-19, and we will keep working on that and have more to say soon.
Hello, Prime Minister. Tom Parry, CBC. Municipalities have taken a big hit during the pandemic. Have you given any more thought to helping them? And if you do, how would that work with the provinces?
We continue to work with the provinces on the challenges that they're facing. We see municipalities absorbing many extra costs because of COVID-19. They are the responsibility of the provinces, of course, and we respect the constitutional division of powers in this country. But at the same time, we are looking for ways to make sure that municipalities have the necessary flexibility and tools to keep their citizens safe and to deliver necessary services. But those are conversations that we're ongoing with the provinces.
Can I ask you as well, when the economy starts to reopen gradually, you're going to have a lot of businesses that are going to be on the market for personal protective equipment. There's a high demand for it out there already. Are you making any kind of plans to deal with that?
Every single day, every week, we are ramping up our supplies of personal protective equipment. We have been ensuring that as much as possible, our healthcare workers, our frontline essential workers, get the equipment they need to keep themselves safe. But as we look at reopening the economy in different parts of the country, we know there is going to be an increased demand for personal protective equipment. That's one of the principles and guidelines we have to keep in mind as we look at reopening. Will there be enough PPE for various sectors to open up? And that's a piece of it. We are expecting to receive a shipment of PPE every day on flights from China this week. We are ramping up our domestic production capacities for personal protective equipment because we know that is going to be an important source for Canadian businesses and Canadian industry in the coming months. These are all things we're doing to make sure we can take the decisions that will gradually reopen the economy while keeping Canadians safe.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Philippe Vincent Foisy de Radio-Canada. Sur la PCU et l'aide aux étudiants...
On the emergency benefit and help for students, will you make modifications so there's more incitation to go work? Now, if you work and make $1,001, you no longer can get the benefits. So to get more, you need to work a lot of hours. So it's not an incitation or an invitation to work more. And there's many employer group or companies that say that it's not an incentive to have workers work for them. We're currently in a confinement context due to COVID-19. There's not enough jobs for Canadians across the country. Yes, we are conscious of the challenges regarding the encouragements to work to have workers in the industries, and we will make sure that those who need workers will have those workers. But we're in a situation where millions of Canadians will not be able to get a paycheck for the work completed, and so we needed to support them. There's not enough jobs right now for Canadians. There's not enough jobs for students. We need to support them, and that's a decision that the government must take. Why not making those more flexible and give more flexibility so that people can get a part of the benefit, but can still go to work in the long-term care centers, for instance? And so we encourage people to go where we really need them if we had more flexibility. That's something we thought about right off the bat to see how we can help in the right way the different workers and the different industries. The reality is that we needed to get out those benefits so people can pay their rent and do their groceries. And especially that they can make a choice of stay home and isolate and protect our neighbors, our workers in the healthcare center. If we didn't adequately to the workers in order to replace those lost paychecks, then they would have been forced to go into vulnerable positions in order to help their families, and that would have lengthened the crisis period of this COVID-19 pandemic. So we decided to go quickly, to do it in a solid fashion. Over 8 million Canadians are getting the emergency response benefit. And we know that every element of complexity added to this program would increase the risk of not being able to deliver quickly those monies and in a robust fashion for our citizens. So we decided to go quickly and robustly and simply. That's what we did.
Hi, Prime Minister. Mackenzie Gray from CTV News. Over the last number of weeks, you've said that life will not return to normal until we get a vaccine. We asked Dr. Tam about those questions on the weekend. She said, and this is a quote, it's very premature to comment on if we'll get a vaccine, and if we do, how effective it will be. So considering her cautious words on our ability to get a vaccine, is it still your position that life will return to normal only if we do get one?
Normal is something that is a long way off for all of us. And if we want life to get back to the way it was exactly before, it won't. There will be differences even a few years from now that we will have learned from dealing with this global pandemic that I think will be important lessons. As we move forward over the coming months, we will be able to see careful reopenings in certain sectors of the economy, certain things being allowed as people try to get back to something a little more like normal. But until we have a vaccine for COVID-19 or a system of treatments that are equivalent to a vaccine, where we can be sure that people will not, they will not have COVID-19 be as lethal as it is now, we are going to have to be very careful. That caution will remain, because at any time, if we loosen our measures too much, we could find ourselves back in a tremendous spike. Historians remember from the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic that the spring was pretty bad, but the fall was much worse. We need to stay vigilant every step of the way. And that's what we're focused on, so that this disruption to our economy, to our lives, that is difficult to go through right now, will not have been for nothing, and we will continue to keep ourselves safe for the coming months. Okay. Nous reconnaissons... Ce qui est normal,
what's normal
va prendre longtemps.
Will take a long time before we get there. And maybe in 2-3 years, even after a vaccine for COVID-19, we still have changed behaviors. We have taken measures as a society that won't be the same than what we have now and what we had before. We will continue to evolve. But we will be able to get back to some activities in the months coming that will be not as tough as this total confinement period we're in now. We need to be careful until we get either a vaccine or treatment that will be the equivalent of a vaccine, that will keep us safe and enable us to be not as worried regarding the propagation of COVID-19. But between now and then, we are always at risk of seeing an increase or a surge of case in an amount of cases if we're not careful, if we do not follow the advice and recommendations of the public health agencies. Now, historians are reminding us that the Spanish flu epidemic in 1918 had a tough spring, but a fall that was disastrous. So that's the level where we must stay vigilant. We must be very careful of not losing all the gains we have obtained for now by limiting the propagation of the virus.
A number of business leaders and even the WHO have discussed the idea of a health passport, which would allow businesses and cities, other people, to determine, you would show whether or not you've had COVID-19. And I know you mentioned earlier that the science is still out on immunity and antibody tests, but the idea of Canadians having to show personal health information in exchange for going back to work, going back to school, is that an idea that you're comfortable with?
that is even premature to speculate about. There is no conclusive evidence right now that having contracted COVID-19 once protects you from contracting it again a few months later. This is too new a virus. Scientists are working very hard on exactly that, whether the presence of antibodies in someone will protect them from catching COVID-19 again. But we don't know that yet. That's why we have to be very, very careful, because if we make a mistake on this and allow too much loosening of our economy and of our restrictions, and we suddenly get another massive spike, it is going to be devastating, not just for our economy, but for people who will have gone through all these weeks of sacrifices and limitations for nothing. That's something we want to avoid. Okay. C'est bien trop prématuré.
It's way too premature to speak about any passport or immunity, since we do not know at this point if someone who had COVID-19 is protected of getting it again in a few months. Science is not conclusive on this. Maybe one day, maybe soon, we will know, but we do not know at this point, so it would be irresponsible. It wouldn't be prudent to base our reflection on this idea of immunity when we do not know it is a firm principle.